We will call the Rules Committee to order. This is our March meeting. I'd like to welcome everybody on this short week. At this time, we will go to our invocation. Councilor Warner, would you
bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, Lord. We thank you for this time of fellowship, Lord. We ask that you fill our hearts with your wisdom and your patience, Lord, and just let us act in a civil nature, Lord, as we move forward with your business. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Roll call, Shelley. Ani.
Ani.
Here.
Charlie Buzzard.
Here.
Sean Crittenden.
Ani.
Mike Dobbins.
Here.
Frank Targus. Wanda Hatfield. Rex Jordan.
Here.
Dick Clark. Mike Shambaugh.
Here.
Mary Bakershaw.
Ani.
Theo Smith.
Here.
Denise Taylor. Victoria Vasquez. David Walkenstick.
Ani. The minutes were mailed to you. At this time, I entertain a motion. A motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it. Reports, Marshall Geneville.
Good afternoon. Just real quick, that's not on the reports. As spring is hitting, of course, we at the Marshal Service get busier. I think crime picks up when it's a little warmer and a little nicer outside. But also, a lot of the communities that we help out they're starting to build their event schedules. And so if you have something that you need either myself or one of my marshals to attend, please email me. Have the staff here at the council email me with the dates and the times and where at. And I will try my best to meet them. Okay. That's something we try to do every year. I can't go to every event. I wish I could, but we'll definitely get to the large events. And if you need marshals to one of your events for a particular reason, call us, and we will have them there. If you have a community issue, we had a funeral the other day that I've got a phone call on, and if we have marshals that aren't putting handcuffs on somebody right then, we try our best to help out. You are voice in the community. You represent those communities more than anybody here at the tribe, and we should always look to that to try to support you and the communities that you represent. So, with that, is there any questions that you have for me?
Any questions for our marshal? Yes, Councilor Warner.
Sir, this is from the family. They want to tell you thank you, and they really appreciate it. It meant a lot. It meant a lot to them.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Councilor Buzzard.
Shannon, you know, with what's going on throughout the United States today with shootings in schools and stuff, and I know we have a policy here at the Cherokee Nation where you can't have guns on our properties. Have you taken a look at that and see if we need to update that policy? Because what I understand, what concerns me is, I used to work on North Street over there, and it's away from everybody else. And I know we have some citizens that work here that have license to carry, concealed carry. Have we ever given some thought about seeing who those people are and maybe look at that policy, see if we want to change the policy?
Well, first of all, it is a policy, but it's also it's not allowed for as yet in tribal law. That's a legislative issue.
Yeah,
it's not a police issue. We will follow whatever this body brings forward as a law. You know, as long as that law is righteous and within the bounds of the law, then we will enforce whatever this body brings forward. Other than that, I don't know that I'm the person that needs to speak toward policy issues on that side of it. Okay, that would be. I would love to have the AG's opinion on the legal side of it, because I'm not an attorney. I would probably pose those questions to him and administration, maybe HR, see what what kind of policies they would have to integrate once the law let's say if you did change the law to allow concealed carry permits on Indian country, one of the things would have to be look at the federal law. What do they allow us to do? And then if everything's kosher, then I think the lion's share of that work would probably be done by human resources on establishing those policies of where, when, and how, and all that. But as far as the marshal, I will tell you my stance on any of this is I believe in the protection of the Bill of Rights, all of the protection of the Bill of Rights. That's why I'm a huge advocate of the First Amendment. I'm a huge advocate of to peacefully assemble to address grievances with your country, your government. So all of them are very important, and one of those is the Second Amendment. Now it's like I can't yell fire in a movie theater, okay? I don't get to stand behind the First Amendment protection for that. There's some things that the Second Amendment doesn't protect, okay? But that's kind of where I come from as the marshal, is I'm always looking to protect constitutional freedoms, constitutional liberties, because that's what I swear to do, is protect the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the Cherokee Nation. So I feel like I will be on the backside of that discussion, in my opinion.
Well, I don't know that it's a federal law or a state law about Indian country. I think what we got is a policy.
Well, no, it's not state law. There's
State or federal.
there's no tribal code for allowing that, like there is state. You have a state concealed carry permit. You go down and get your concealed carry. But that doesn't allow you to carry on Indian country, because that's not the state of Oklahoma. So, and even in the state of Oklahoma, you can't go into government offices, you can't go into, 2 or 3 places. And so that would all have to be looked at by people, quite frankly, much smarter than I am, to decide, okay, so we allow guns on Indian country. Do we do exactly like the state does? If so, then they won't be allowed in here. They won't be allowed on North Street because it's a government building. So I don't know. Those are questions far above where just your appointed police officer can tell you that.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to know what your thoughts were on the thing. Okay. We'll check it.
Yes, Councilor Buell, hang on.
Yeah, thanks, Speaker. Shannon, would you get that for us fairly quick? Because I just had a citizen ask me the other day if he could come on our Cherokee Nation property, and he's a concealed carry person.
Yeah, I can tell you that that's no at this juncture.
That's a no?
It's no at this juncture.
Okay. I told him, I said, I don't know, but I'll check. And
I can tell you at this juncture, you cannot go on Indian country with a concealed carry permit. The only thing in tribal statute is a police officer, armed security under the direction of the marshal, or a person actively involved in a hunting sport. Like if you go on up in Kenwood in one of the hunting refuges, you can bring your firearm to hunt, but there's no caveat for concealed carry in the Cherokee Nation this time.
okay.
Good. Anybody else? Yes, Councilor.
Shane, I'm just curious, so Indian country,
Yes.
okay, that, like my neck of the woods, them roads, that if a marshal seen a guy with a concealed carry, that'd be a problem?
We get into, is the roadway, does it have Indian country on both sides? Is it a county maintained road? There's all these nuances. When we look at Indian country as a black and white thing, as far as what we look at, we're talking about this building, okay? The complexes around here, we're talking about the casinos, and not all the casino parking lots, because some of the casino parking lots are state land. We're looking at, restricted land and not necessarily the highway between, even though it could very well be, but that's not a black and white yes or no. That's
Interesting.
yeah, realtors have to look at it. But I hope that I hire reasonable men and women to be marshals.
Right.
We're not in the business of taking good law-abiding citizens to jail, and it might be that they just don't know
Right.
that they can't carry in this particular spot. So I can tell you it's been our philosophy all along, if you're not doing anything wrong, and we do this all the time at Hard Rock. Somebody will call us, say, hey, there's a person with a gun in Hard Rock. Somebody's seen it hanging out of their jacket. And so one of us will come up, ask them if they're a concealed carry permit holder, and 9 times out of 10 they are. We get it, and then we advise them why they can't be there.
It's
And
good common sense.
yeah, it's good common sense policing. You know, we're not going to jump up and down and take you to jail because you're a concealed carry holder unless something else is happening, okay? Now, if we've told you, you know, and then tomorrow night you're back in the casino with a concealed carry, we would have issues. But, you know, unless there's extenuating circumstances, we're going to advise that person about where they're standing and why their Oklahoma concealed carry doesn't work there. So that's generally what we will do.
Thank you. Interesting.
Good. Anybody else? I had the opportunity of attending the Alice training at the Wellness Center a couple of weeks ago. It's really an eye-opener. You had some of your marshals there, very, very professional. He gives you a whole different perspective of the facility that you operate out of. One like this here. Where are the exits? Where's our first move? What do we do? I did it as a spectator, and I did it as an observer. I looked at both ways. And I think we're doing it in various departments here at the nation, correct?
We are. We're working. Shauna Roach, I've put in charge of the Alice program. She's getting more marshal instructors as we speak, trying to get them trained. Human Resources has really jumped on the bandwagon with us to help set up the trainings and set up the locations. So I think it's the program, as we were talking about, is doing really good stuff, in my opinion.
Going to be a cost to this for safety, as it always is?
You know, there's always a cost. I wish I could do something for free, but well, that's really, you know, I have to do too much for free to my wife. You know, I had to mow the yard and stuff.
Just by changing out a door where you can lock the door automatically, little things like that will prevent some hazard there. It
is. Small things, you know, just how you do your scheduling, how you set up your office space. We've done it for years. We'll go around to different buildings within the Cherokee Nation. They'll ask us to come in and do a threat assessment survey, and I'll send some special operations men and women over there, and they'll go through and actually address some of those things as far as risks that you have in your workplace. The Cherokee Nation Risk Management Department does that as well. They can come in and offer suggestions, and some of these suggestions are cheap or free. You know, some of the suggestions get very expensive depending on where you're at and what you're needing and the type of threat that you have. So yeah, I'm very proud of the program. I think Shauna and the staff that she has aligned so far are doing a really good job to get this out. And I encourage, if you have one of these trainings in your area, stop in. We're more than welcome to have you there. I'm glad that you enjoyed it, and I'm glad it.
I didn't say I enjoyed it.
It sounds like you enjoyed it, but it opened your eyes up to
It
kind
did.
of.
It's educational.
Yeah, to kind of what would
I'd
happen.
like to have something presented to this council in this environment right here.
Okay.
You know, how do we react where we have our committee meetings?
All you'd have to do is have your staff get with us, and we'll set up the times, and we'll be more than happy to do it.
Okay. All right. We'll work on that. Anybody else? Next month?
Yeah, we've got it scheduled for Rules Day in April.
All right, there you go.
They're ahead of the game. Oh, that's good. All right. Okay. Anybody else? Thank you, Shannon. Good report. Office of the Attorney General, Chrissy Nemo.
Speaking of Indian country, the Murphy case that says all of Creek Nation is Indian country, the state of Oklahoma did appeal that to the United States, or sought cert from the United States Supreme Court. The United States government joined them in telling the court that they need to hear this case. The response of Mr. Murphy is due April 9th. There will be a short time period after that. I think it's 15 days for the state to file a reply, and then it will just be put on the Supreme Court's calendar to determine whether or not they will take that case. And there's no specific time period for them to decide whether or not they're going to hear it. If they don't decide by, I believe, the first week of June, then they break for the summer. So it would be in the fall before it was back in front of them for them to decide whether or not they would take the case. And I believe with the timing, even if they did decide to take it, it would be late next fall before they would hear the case. So we're still many months out from possibly knowing whether or not they take the Murphy case, and then if they decide to take it, the briefing and the argument and the decision on it could put us out another year or so on that. So we are working with the 5 tribes Intertribal Council to try to set up a meeting at the next 5 tribes meeting with the district attorneys in all of the counties that all of the 5 tribes cover, to talk about what Murphy means and what it means for law enforcement, to talk with those district attorneys. So we're in the preliminary stages of that, but we're reaching out. Our office has done several presentations about the case and what it may mean and what it may not mean. There are lots and lots of questions because we've talked about it a little bit, but that case, the holding is very unique. It is that Creek Nation is a reservation, and therefore Creek Nation has criminal jurisdiction over these crimes and not the state of Oklahoma. But because people know how Indian law works, that they start talking about the other 4 tribes of the 5, and they start talking about civil jurisdiction, and all of a sudden you get into questions about, we did a presentation with a group of lawyers, and a lawyer said, well, can I still sell my house if it's in the Creek Nation reservation? And we said, of course you can. So we do a lot. If you guys get any questions on those, feel free to refer them to our office. We're talking to attorneys and non-attorneys alike on kind of what that case could mean and how we prepare one way or the other what the decision of the Supreme Court is on it. So we monitor that. The only other announcement I have, the UKB Land in a Trust case has been set, that appeal has been set for oral argument May 16th, and that will be in Denver, Colorado at the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals.
Okay.
Other than that, I'll take questions if you have any.
Any questions or comments for AG? Yes, Councilor Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chrissy, you were here when the marshal was speaking about Indian country and concealed carry. And so if all of eastern Oklahoma is Indian country, at this point, especially if the Supreme Court turns the Murphy case down, are we going to need to go through and some law changes within the 5 tribes?
Maybe. What that would mean for that, if it's a crime to conceal carry on Indian country, we still don't have jurisdiction over non-Indians for that. So it would mean that it was a criminal violation for Indians to conceal carry in the 14 counties. Now, if conceal carry is what the lawmaking body desires, then it would be legal in the 14 counties. I can't talk in a public forum too much, but there are lots of folks at the tribal, state, and federal level working on kind of contingencies on either way this case turns out. And I can't say a lot here, but we'd be happy to talk to you about that. But we absolutely would want to consider how our current law would then, not how it would apply, because we know how it would apply, but what that would look like, and the increase in police power and filing of charges and those types of things. So I don't know that it's so much that we would change a lot of laws. It would just be that we would want to be aware of how they would be applied, and then there would be policy discussions about should we change those or not. But our law applies to Cherokee Nation Indian country. Murphy decision may have an effect on how big that Indian country is.
Somebody asked me the other day, is this the alleged fellow who committed the alleged crime? Is he still locked up in jail, in prison?
I assume that he is. This was not a, it was to stop the death penalty, not necessarily to get him out. And what's really interesting about this case, the reason we hope the court doesn't take it, even if they take it and overturn what the 10th Circuit said, the death penalty doesn't reinstate. So he would have to be, if the state of Oklahoma wanted to execute him, they would have to try him again. I don't know if they'd have to try him. They would have to at least go through the sentencing phase again to reinstate the death penalty. So the actual controversy that is the subject of this case, whether or not the state of Oklahoma can execute an Indian who committed a crime on Indian country, is not solved by the Supreme Court saying whether or not the Creek Nation is a reservation. So that alone may be a reason for the court not to hear the case, which is what we hope. We hope that they decline to hear it and they uphold the 10th Circuit opinion that says a Creek Nation reservation was never disestablished.
Thank you. That'd be interesting. Yes, Councilor Watkins.
Chrissy, the argument I hear with taxation and increasing taxation, if this goes through and the tribes have jurisdiction over their boundaries for criminals, how do you see that playing out with as far as the state goes?
That's a big question. What we know is that we have certain civil jurisdiction over Indian country and the state doesn't. In other situations, the state does have some civil jurisdiction over Indian country. A lot of this has been decided in other states where there are reservations about where state law applies and where state law doesn't apply. Again, this case doesn't mean that Cherokee Nation has a reservation, and this case doesn't mean that Creek Nation has civil jurisdiction. All it means is for criminal purposes, Creek Nation is a reservation. So what that means is, I think there are two ways that it goes. It either leads to a lot of litigation between the tribes and the states to determine what it means in every other context, or it leads to additional compacting and cooperative agreements with the state, because instead of suing each other, we all decide that it's in our best interest, like we've done in tobacco taxes and car tag taxes, that we agree to come to an agreement on how we are going to govern both non-Indians on Indian country and Indians on state land, and reach an agreement that is mutually beneficial for both the tribe and the state. I definitely see, I think either way Murphy turns out, that this case gives the states and the tribes not only an opportunity but an incentive to maybe work together more. Because even if Creek Nation isn't a reservation, that doesn't necessarily mean that Cherokee Nation is not, or Chickasaw Nation is not. So those issues still have to be litigated. It is a very unknown world for all of us, but I do think that, as we have done in the past with the state, instead of going to court to argue about who can collect tobacco taxes on Indian country on non-Indians, we agree to come to an agreement on we're going to do it and split the money.
And we're going to increase law enforcement if this plays through and Cherokee Nation is over 14 counties. There's going to have to be some taxing dollars coming to the tribe to pay for those salaries. Talking about sovereignty and tribes trying to get full jurisdiction over their lands, I think it's an opportunity for us as a nation to fully regulate our jurisdiction and our boundaries. I think this is an increase in our sovereignty. So let's watch and wait and see how the courts rule. But it's kind of been quiet. This Murphy case hasn't been a full-blown issue in Indian country. Haven't been seen on the front pages of different newspapers and so forth. So I would think that there'd be more tribes speaking out towards this case.
Well, I think it's definitely limited to the 5 tribes, even if we extend it, if we extend it out as far as it goes, because the reason, the 5 tribes are so different from the other 32 tribes in the state of Oklahoma, the way that they were created, the land bases that they were granted and that type of thing. I haven't heard anyone at all make an argument that it would apply to anyone other than the 5 tribes. So then we're talking about the 5 tribes, and again, we can talk about what it might mean down the road, but all we know for certain is even if the case stands, it means the Creek Nation and the federal government have criminal jurisdiction in the Creek Nation's 9 counties and the state doesn't. And beyond that, it is all speculation because it's either going to be courts deciding it or it's going to be tribes and states reaching agreements so they don't have to have a court decide it.
Interesting. Appreciate that. Thanks, Speaker.
You good? Anybody else? Clerk. Next, we have Gwen Terrapin.
Good afternoon. For 2013, we've only had 3 so far. We've got, we had 1 GRA and 2 FOIAs, and at this time I don't have any outstanding. I've had a few issues with the website, so it's not completely updated yet, and that's pretty much it. I think all of you got a copy of my report to date, and I hope all of you have a blessed Easter.
Yes. Yes, Councilor Walker.
Gwen, I've been communicating through phone and email with you about a GRA request. Just let this body know, I've been trying to get a GRA request for almost a year. First, I went through an email process, and then that email process was said there wasn't enough time to submit get the information for the request, and 3 months went by with that, and then there was an email from the office saying, well, we need it to an official form, GRA form. So a few months went by, I submitted it to a GRA form, and we're going on our 4th month on trying to get this information in. So I guess my question is when an elected official is trying to retrieve a government record, what are the repercussions of the people in that branch trying to get the information? Like, what's the repercussions of that?
Well, they're legal. The GRA and the FOIA contain the provisions for violation of that act. Councilor Walkingstick, I think, I know the issue you're talking about. I've communicated with Terrapin about it. The problem is you're asking for something to be created that doesn't exist. Governmental records, FOIA is for public records that anyone can come, if that record is available and it's not confidential or restricted, anyone can look at it. Governmental Records Act was designed to specifically allow tribal council members to access documents and records that the public doesn't have access to for various reasons. I think that the issue that we're running into is what you are asking is not necessarily a GRA request, because you're not asking for something that's setting out there that can be given to you. You're asking for something to be created to answer some questions or give you some information, and there's not something readily available, and so that's not
what the email said.
Yeah.
So the request is CMB employees that make $100,000 or more. We asked for what those wages were and what their ethnicity was.
And their
Okay,
and their job description and their name and
yeah. So the CEO comes up every month and says we got 72% Cherokees work for Cherokee Nation. That information should be readily available, you would think. Every year, the finance department and HR department, they distribute W-2s to every employee with wages. That should be readily available. Names, job descriptions. I want to know how many of our Cherokees are in upper management. Getting this email, information not readily available, it doesn't do it for me. I don't buy it. I think that there's information that doesn't want to be disseminated to the tribal council.
Well, I think the answer is you don't do that then through a GRA or a FOIA, because they are specifically designed to share records that exist. And yes, there are ways to get all of that information, but there's not a report to run right now or a binder setting out there that has that information.
How many employees make 100,000 more at CMB? It can't be that many.
I don't know.
We got 9,000 employees. There can't be over 500 people that make over $100,000.
What I'm saying, Councilor Walking Stick, is I think you're asking the wrong person and the wrong office for that information.
Well,
that's not.
I need to go directly to the directors. Is that what you're saying?
What I am saying is it's not a GRA.
The FOIA and GRA to the director?
No, because it's not information that would come from requesting a FOIA or a GRA, because it's not a record that exists in the government or in the business. You are asking them to create a report.
Not a report.
Well, whatever it is.
I don't want a monthly report. I want one document.
Well, you're asking them to create a document that doesn't exist. You're asking them to assign someone to pull all the people who make a certain amount of money and then list their job description and then list whether or not they're Cherokee.
The best IT department in the United States at CMB. They can't pull a document.
Well, even that, I know it was CMB an entity. CMB is one HR group. CNE is another HR group. I don't know enough about that to tell you how they would have to do that. What I know is that you're asking the FOIA officer to get a record from a business, and her job and her response is to work with the business, and they say that is not a record that we have readily available. I am not saying that's not something that can be created, but it's not a governmental. It's not a record that exists that is disclosed to you under the Governmental Records Act.
Okay, Glenn, could you get me the emails from CMB saying the information isn't readily available, and with the actual emails and the dates and times that those were sent to you after you submitted that request to them? Can you give me that information?
I'll check my records on that.
Okay, thank you. This is a joke. Thank you, Speaker.
Okay. Anybody else? Councilor Chris.
Yeah, you just got me. We've got a whole lot of important people in here. Where would he go? Can somebody give us that answer to get that information?
Well, I mean, a lot of people you could, I don't know. I don't know who the person who can.
Does anybody know here?
Well, I think you would talk to the executive director or the president of CMB. You maybe talk to board members. You maybe talk to their HR director. You maybe talk to their lawyer. I don't know that, because all I'm telling you is Gwen's job is she gets a FOIA or a GRA that asks for records, and she goes to that department or that business and says, this request has come in for these records. And then there are responses, either that those don't exist, or obviously if they're there, they're shared. So I'm here answering the question that was asked of her, why these weren't given and how you get them.
And I can accept that's not Gwen.
Yeah.
But anybody know where we can get that information?
Is it not provided in your yearly or reports that you receive for your budgets?
No, you're talking about CMB. They don't get.
Okay.
They don't get CMB budgets.
Okay.
And for even, we've had that issue here. So for Cherokee Nation, you guys get a budget book every year that lists a position and the amount of money that position gets paid. But if you wanted to know, right? But if you wanted to know,
I'm to the point where this body needs to start overseeing CMB, or at least be an advisor where CMB comes and reports to us their finances, so we can see those firsthand. Us not being able to retrieve information from CMB, we were elected to oversee all of the Cherokee Nation assets. And not the CMB board. We appointed that board to oversee those assets, and we trust them with that. But when we want to pull a documentation or record and we're not able to obtain it, there's a problem there. So we have to do some type of reorganization on how we have transparency in this council, so we can see where our dollars and our assets are going.
I agree.
I don't know that you can't see that information. You just can't see it through a GRA request because that's not how you get it.
And as a council member, the only form of communication I have to another entity is through the FOIA process, being an elected official. That's how we do things. That's our structure. When we request information, we go through that documentation. That way it's on public record and there's transparency.
When you request records, that again, I hate to belabor this, and I'm not trying to be argumentative, and it's not just semantics.
I apologize. Thanks, Speaker.
You're good. Councilor Lane?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've got a couple of questions just to Gwen, but stay right there. Because it seems like, and my memory may not be perfect, but 3 or 4 years ago, we could ask those kinds of questions and those records would be built, custom made, if you will. And I don't know what happened to that process, but I know that we've received at least pretty narrow. This is maybe a little wider than spectrum than what I'm referring to. But I know that both the tribe side and the business side were able to put somebody to work on it to build those records. And I'll just leave that as an observation that I remember seeing.
I think that was prior to our updating the GRA and the FOIA.
Well, and here we go.
And
so
prior to us having.
Look at that.
Okay.
Thank you. And I think you're right. I think you're absolutely correct. And that's good information. We need to be able to rebuild or try to find somebody who can rebuild those records if they're really necessary for us to look at. Does that make sense?
We think so.
Yeah, I think so.
If I can get a nod of the head, I'll go on to my real question.
Yeah.
Thank you. Gwen, and you may as well stay because this may get legal too. On the FOIA request, I see here from I guess it's the latest ones, and I think I got this by email and not by, I like to read things while I'm asking you questions, but here we go. A request for the documents from 4 categories of MRI referrals from, I think, the Cherokee Phoenix. And the response to that was that no document exists in response to that request. After spending tens and tens of millions of dollars on the Cerner EHR system, somebody can't go in there and press a button and spew out that report.
Right, because.
And so that's one of my questions. I've got one more.
Okay.
And you can just hit them both at the same time because it looks like the answer was the same. Lindsay K. Burton asked for a turnover rate for the 3 years at W.W. Hastings Hospital. Again, the response was no document exists in response to this request, which is a little bit like what Councilor Walkenstick was talking about, but it is the tribe side and it's health, and it's a different issue. It should be closer to us here, and we still can't get the records built. That information's got to be in there.
Well, part of it is how that information's asked for. So someone asked for turnover rate. Now, if someone had asked for and someone did, because this was reported recently, the number of people who had left employment of a department in a time period, that we can find out. Turnover rate, first of all, what does that mean? Does that mean the percentage of total employees who have quit? Does that mean the number of jobs that have been open and then filled? this is, Gwen takes what someone submits to her and sends it to the department.
Good at it, I
And they
appreciate it.
respond,
But
and she then sends that response
That's
out.
why I left you sitting there,
Right.
because this is gonna funnel down to you or somebody in health. I'm gonna ask health the same question in the next health committee meeting. But it's their issue. Gwen's just our helpmate in trying to figure this stuff out, and we appreciate it.
And oftentimes they do reword them because they understand that just because common terms are used, especially the reporter ones, they will get a response that says, okay, we don't have what you ask for, but they know what it is, that the information that they're trying to get at, and they will resubmit that with a reworded, and there have been times, I know there have been several that I can think of, that once they ask for what it is that we actually have, they got that. But and this is FOIA across the board. If you look at the state level, at the federal level, it is not the government's job when someone's seeking information to try to guess at what they want and then give it to them. It is under FOIA, you ask for something, someone checks to see if it's available. If so, and it's not document, it's record, because we don't have documents for everything. We have things in computers and right. But pushing a button for something that's already a query that's already run and printing that is different than going in and getting from one list all the people that are X, and then going and looking at each one of them individually to determine whether or not they're Cherokee, and then pulling their job description and attaching that to something.
And you're making this more difficult than my question does. And so these folks then need to get back to you, is what you're telling me, to get a more specific, to narrow down the range of what they're trying to find. Is that what you're telling me?
Right.
Because I've done that back and forth with Gwen a couple of times on a couple of issues, and we finally got to where I wanted to go.
Right.
But, so, these folks need to be made aware that just because this came out, no documents exist this time, doesn't mean that there can't be one if they narrow their range down and get their verbiage correct, or whatever it is that lawyers don't like about the request. Lawyers don't like anything. But that's-
It's not lawyer. We only see the ones that are legal issues.
Yeah.
Gwen does most of them herself.
And in response to the one regarding the MRIs, that has a lot to do with our HIPAA laws also, because
Well,
we
but the
have to
numbers
follow
don't,
that.
I don't think.
But the way that I understand it, that our records are set up, is that someone would have to spend several hundred hours to go through there and create the document.
Okay, so
what
we
they're
spent
asking
$30 million on an EHR system that I was promised, that this body was promised, was going to be able to produce those kinds of reports and records to this body. And it can't do it.
They may still be working with it to where
After 2 or 3
eventually
years,
it will
How
be
long
able
have we been
to.
on this thing? And it's not your question to ask.
Right.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
And maybe on the health question there, I would go to the CEO. I'd go with Dr. Grimm and have a sit down and say, help me propose this question, and this is what I'm looking for. I just use some common sense there. I wouldn't make it too technical, and probably get what I wanted. Just thought. Anyway, any more questions? Okay, good report.
Thank you.
The election commission was put there inadvertently. They don't report till next month. So we'll drop down to our tax commission, Sharon Weston, who is always dependable to be here and give you a good update. Sharon.
I believe you do have my report. I'll try to address any questions you might have.
Questions for Sharon? Yes, Councilor Buzzer.
Sharon, have you had a chance to look at the handicap
Yes.
request there?
Actually had one of my staff members and a couple of from roads to go up, and they're supposed to be getting me some estimates on how it can be fixed. I don't have it yet, but they are working on it.
I just had a call last night about it, and I said, well, she's aware of it. So,
Yeah, they're working on it.
thanks. Thanks, sir.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, good report.
Thank you.
That was easy. Self-governance, Karen Ketcher. She here, we usually put her to the front and she misses. She's here.
I flew in especially late last night just to be here. I think you have my report. Does anybody have any questions?
Self-governance? Anything exciting going on in self-governance?
Well, we spent last week and this week talking about budget, and the budget looks good. Increases.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, increases. So a lot of other things that are going on, but the budget is the main thing we're looking at right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, Councilor Busby?
I guess I was on the impression that we had already compacted our donated food program, but we haven't. Is that right?
No, it doesn't come through our program, through the self-governance program. It's a contract with USDA.
Comes through USDA, so we can compact through USDA.
Yes, we can, and that's one of the things that's being looked at right now.
I don't know why I thought it was already compacted, but what I get for thinking, I guess.
It's
Thanks, sir.
USDA is, I think there's going to be a meeting in New Orleans. I won't be able to go, but there's one in New Orleans in April sometime with regard to the compacting of USDA, of the donated foods program. Although they're looking at SNAP right now.
Okay. Any of our intertribal contracted their donated foods yet?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Good report. Next, we have Gaming Commission, Jamie Hunnenberg. Jamie's becoming real dependable here lately.
Good afternoon, Council.
Good afternoon.
Once again, I'm glad for you to see me. I believe my report has made its way into your voluminous package there. Just a couple of things I want to share with the Rules Committee that are not in that report. One is kind of a continuation from last month. We are still awaiting some word on the Professional Amateur Sports Protection Act, the PASPA, question that's been put before the U.S. Supreme Court. It has not yet been decided. However, everybody is expecting it virtually any time, April, May, definitely before June. But once that comes down, we will see exactly what that holds for tribes and our respective states. We are closely watching what's going on with House Bill 3375. It passed out of the House last week or week before. I can't remember exactly which now. But it did pass out by, I think it was, the vote was 66 to 22 to push it over to the Senate. That particular bill would remove a couple of prohibitions that are contained within the Oklahoma statutes, those specifically dealing with the use of physical wheels and balls for the play of roulette and the use of physical dice for the play of craps. So we are definitely watching that. The indicators are that it will pass. We're going to see if those indicators ring true. Not necessarily one to be waiting for the results to come down. The staff and I are actively preparing for that eventuality. The change in law would automatically call into question some of the regulations and, of course, the policies that are followed on the operations side. We'd have to make some necessary adjustments to accommodate these new elements to be introduced. So we are working on those, and should that become a reality, then we will start our process to prepare for that. It is something that will take a little time to get done, and it will take a little time to get the rules changed. So we are trying to be a little proactive when it comes to this little measure here. And finally, we just came off of a successful National Tribal Gaming Commissioners and Regulators Conference in Washington. We had 300 regulators at the Northern Quest Casino up in Spokane. If you ever have an occasion or opportunity to go to a gaming show, particularly National Tribal Gaming Commissioners, since I'm the chair, just a shameless plug for that organization, encourage you to do so. There's a lot of dynamics in the gaming industry, maybe even more than you realize. But we'd give you all you ever wanted and then some about regulating casinos. So, but we did have a great show. Our next one's going to be in Mystic Lake in September. So if you don't have any travel plans in September 17th, 18th, 19th, Minnesota is a good place to be. Nice and cool up there. With that, I'll take any questions.
Yes, Councilor Hatfield?
Could you elaborate? I know you probably have given us all the information about the betting, the sports betting. Is like the professional, is that like sports?
Yes.
Okay. Will that, is that separate from our OTB, or will that be in conjunction with, let's just say, you know, we happen to, and I'm just probably stepping ahead or going ahead.
Right.
But how would that work? Let's just say in case it does go past.
It would be if PASPA is overturned, and it depends on how the Supreme Court actually comes down on that issue. There's basically three ways the Supreme Court can decide. They could either decide to keep the status quo, which means the 4 states that are allowed to do sports wagering right now remain the only 4. They could do a partial repeal, which they may limit it to New Jersey or to some of the areas that signed on, but that is probably right now, I think, when we talk with people in the industry, both on the regulatory side and the operational side and on the lobbyist side, seems to be where the big money is, so to speak, no pun intended. But that's where everybody think is the Supreme Court is leaning towards, is a partial repeal. They could also do a full repeal and say PASPA is unconstitutional and it's open to all 50 states. If that comes down, and if the eventuality or eventually comes to Oklahoma, that would be something that would have to be taken up outside of existing compacts. There are some arguments about whether or not sports wagering is a game of skill, but I think it's a conversation that will have to be had one way or another just to really determine, is it something that we could cover under our existing agreement? If it is, great, that shortens the process. If it's something that has to be done outside of our existing compact, then it prolongs the process. There's a lot of unknowns. The variables are huge in this case. It doesn't have a clear path in any decision that's handed down. So one answer will beget 2 more questions, and that will beget 2 more questions. So it's regardless of what decision is handed down, the work is just beginning, and it's not going to be an overnight, turn on a dime type of thing where we can instantly start offering sports wagering. Even those states that have already adopted sports wagering legislation would not be able to immediately take advantage of it. Because there would still be so many outstanding questions on it. Oklahoma, up until about 2 weeks ago, right before it came out, the House did have sports wagering as a part of that bill. That portion was removed, so sports wagering is not on the table in Oklahoma at this time.
I guess maybe the correct question might have been, would we have to, and I know I'm jumping the gun, but it's just something in the future, but it would be a separate compact, or we would probably have to establish a different...
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
Potentially.
Right.
When we were talking daily fantasy sports, we call it just DFS for short. When we were talking DFS a few years ago, that was an argument then. Does it get covered by existing compacts? Is it something that would have to be happening outside? I think there's an argument that it could be covered by our existing compacts. But there again, that's a discussion for another day. But there's the possibility. I can't say one way or another exactly what the probability would be that we would need a new compact for that.
Well, I just think it's going to have a definite impact if it comes through, financially for...
Yeah, definitely. It's something that I think would have to be considered on some level, simply because I know our surrounding states that have gaming in them, Louisiana, Missouri, Kansas, New Mexico, Texas, all, well, some of them already have legislation on the books, some are considering legislation. If our competitors do it and we don't, that becomes a question, does Oklahoma jump into it? So.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Speaker.
Councilor Watkins.
Hey, James, what's the status on gaming in Arkansas?
Right now, there is still some groundwork being done. As far as I know, there has not been any major moves to put that question back to a vote. I know that there's work being done out there by different groups over in Arkansas, but right now I don't know the probability of it even making the question on the ballot yet.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, Councilor Smith.
If it did pass on the roulette, on the balls, how educated guess, or this ballpark, how long would it take to put it in? 2 days?
Well, the way I understand the process, we would still, this was being put out there as not necessarily an amendment, but I believe it's the word being used as a supplement to our compact. It would still need to go through the actual compacting process, if I'm not mistaken, which means Chief Baker would need to sign the supplement, send it in for DOI approval, and have that published in the Federal Register, just like our original compact did back in 2005. How long that takes, I don't know. In talking with my staff this morning, if it passed today and the chief signed it tomorrow, I'm thinking we're still looking at 60, 90 days before anything could happen. I wouldn't even call that an educated guess. I would call that a pluck from the air guess at this point, because it really depends.
Incidentally, the Senate is holding ball and dice until the House does something else, so who knows? It might not even make it. Okay. It's in serious up there right now. Yeah.
Seriously? Okay.
Okay.
You know, that just strikes me as a shame that that's being held, because I think that would help Oklahoma with the teacher's salary shortage.
Yeah.
Did it pass the House, Jamie?
Excuse me?
Did it pass the House?
It passed out of the House committee, and it's currently sitting over in the Senate.
They're being held hostage.
But apparently being held hostage, yeah.
May I ask, why would they hold it hostage? What is it they're wanting from us to hold it hostage?
I do not have an answer.
The House passed the revenue. They sent it to the Senate. The Senate passed revenue, but the Senate said until the House passes taking the hotel and motel tax out, they're going to hold it. It's not even going to the governor for signature right now. And the whole deal is back. Hopefully it won't fall apart, but things are happening up there right now.
Very dynamic.
Put egos aside and do what's best for the state. Maybe they'll get out of the red. Okay, anybody else? Good report, Jamie. We appreciate you representing us at the national level there. You always do a good job. Keep us posted on the OIGA and NIGA. I know those are coming up.
NIGA is coming up the 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th of April. And OIGA is
June?
June, yes. End of May, first part of June.
Okay, all right. Thank you, sir. Good report.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Dr. Nason Morton next. Tell me you sign off on our new position.
I'll talk to you about it after this. If you don't.
It's a start.
In addition to the report, I have two things. One, I was asked last month to add the percentage to the report. That will appear in next month's report. A further breakdown on the hiring. And the other one is we will be doing open enrollment next month, and should be getting notifications and email reminders throughout the month of where we'll be. We go to some of the clinics, and we also hold it here at the Nation. So there'll be more to come on that one. Are there any questions?
Questions? Comments?
Thank you very much.
Okay, good report. All right. We'll skip to old business. I think we discussed these, or the first one for sure, in last month's meeting, and we had an issue with Section 30. And if it appeases Councilor Lay on the change that's been made, Councilor Vasquez, you have the floor.
Thank you. I move to approve the old business item number 1, enact amendment House 12, of CNCA Civil Code and the substitute version that has been distributed to all counselors. And I would like to make a real brief statement if there is any debate later, if that's all right. Mr. Chairman, the substitute version in front of the committee is the same version that was tabled last month with the exception, like you say, of Section 30. And it has been struck in its entirety. And Section 30 was controversial, but in my view, it was misunderstood. As I understand it, it was designed to allow our AG to have greater authority to investigate cases. And unfortunately, it has been construed as allowing things like warrantless wiretapping and bank accounts and that sort of thing, and that's completely false. Section 30 does not do that. Having said that, I worked with the AG's office to strike Section 30, and this body has far too much to get bogged down in this issue. So we might revisit Section 30 sometime in the future. But for now, it has been struck, and what remains is a good law, and I move for its approval.
Okay. Did you accept that?
I have a clarification question, I guess, to you. If I could ask the council attorney to step forward.
Okay.
I want to make sure, because what Ms. Equez has done is brought the old version forward, which still has Section 30. So is it my understanding that you're deleting Section 30? We're not voting on that. We're only voting on the rest of the legislation. Is that correct?
We're voting on the revised one that did strike Section 30.
Okay, Section 30 is struck.
Okay. I want to make sure that that's where we're at.
And that's why I said if it appeases you, we'll
with that version, with the new version minus Section 30, I'm going to pull my old complaint, which I think is still on the floor. But I'll go ahead and pull that because we're looking at a new version without Section 30.
Yeah.
And I don't know about I'm not going to take issue with anything Councilor said, but I disagree.
Okay. And that's what I started to say. We're not going to get into opinions here. Let's take the issue that we have before us.
Yes.
So you got a motion. Do you have a second?
Second.
Got a second. Okay. Any more discussion? Councilor Critton.
Now, this is starting the Title 12, the 2, right?
Helene, you might as well stay there.
The two things we're voting on, the Title 12 up there?
Yeah, we're going to do the first one.
This is the first one.
We're doing the first one. The second follows, so we have addressed the first one.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Is that good?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we've got a motion and a second. Yes, Councilor Lay.
And if I think either the AG or assistant AG, if they could come forward and just highlight all of these red areas, because I'll be honest, most of us were tied up on Section 30 for a couple of months.
Yeah, Section 30 was the issue.
And
Well, it's all red and it's all out.
Okay.
And so if she could just highlight it and try to get us to full understanding, I appreciate it.
Okay.
Because there's some good stuff in it.
You want me to go through all of it? I mean, I understand the changes.
Can you highlight it?
I'm gonna try.
Okay.
Brevity is not always my.
When you say, Council, when you say all of it, that lets everybody know how much there is in it. And it's very comprehensive, and there's some good things in it. But let's go through them.
Okay, I'm gonna start on, and this is behind tab 1, page 2, section 7 is the First Amendment, right to bring suit. This, obviously, any citizen, and then these are the sections that we did talk about before, giving the Attorney General the authority to bring suit on behalf of the citizens of the Cherokee Nation when they were wronged by some actions. I mean, that's what that entire section is, that we can bring, that the AG's office on behalf of wrongs done to our citizens as a whole can bring suit in tribal, state, or federal court to recover funds that would go to the nation for whatever wrongful acts. We also talked before about how this does not exclude an individual citizen from suing someone for the same cause of action because of something that some company or something did wrong. Chapter 2, statute of limitations, that is standard civil code, that if you have a certain action, whether it be a tort, a contract, and then the contract depends on whether it's written or verbal, acts under this unfair, deceptive practices, antitrust. Statute of limitations just says this is how long you have to bring the suit. If Cherokee Nation is the plaintiff bringing the suit on behalf of its citizens, there's no statute of limitations. Section 13, page 5, as you can see there, those are minor changes, adding citizens, business entities, putting in actual damage amounts for, these are those same parent patriae suits that we would be bringing on behalf of our citizens against businesses who have committed some wrong against the Cherokee Nation. Those are kind of very small technical amendments. See, I say all of it, then we skip through the next several pages and there aren't any changes. We added the word citizens on page 10. This language on page 11, this was something that was brought up when the opioid manufacturers challenged our tribal court jurisdiction. They said that the reason they shouldn't have to exhaust in tribal court, because if they lost, they would have to post this bond while they were appealing, and that would be a financial burden to them. And this gives the parties or the court the ability to not make someone post a bond. So next time this argument comes up, we can say we've made it more fair. Page 13, those are extremely technical amendments. I don't think there's any questions there. We just changed Cherokee Nation business to nation business entity and defined any that is owned or controlled by the Cherokee Nation. Individual person means, you often see this in laws, that a person doesn't actually mean an individual human person. Person means businesses and corporations and groups and everything else. Page 15, directly or indirectly. Page 17 is a new section describing bait and switch, and you can take action against a business if they do bait and switch in their advertisings and sales. Page 19, charging unreasonable prices or interest rates are actionable. Section 20 is page 20. No discrimination based on gender, ethnicity, tribal affiliation. Also putting specific violations, the monetary amount if you violate the act. Increasing the fine for violating this act on page 22. If it involves a senior citizen or disabled person, it goes, instead of $10,000, it's $25,000. The sections that are struck on page 23, I think some of those are actually just moved. So you have some of the strike sections on page 23, and then you have an insertion there on G, and I think that's some rearranging. Yeah, because it talks about the defendant's conduct. Again, having specific stronger penalties for senior citizens or disabled persons. Page 25, technical amendments. Starting on page 26 through 30, that is all what has now been removed, so that's no longer in there. Page 30 says that we will charge the same interest rates on judgments as the United States government does. Is that quick?
That's quick, that's good. Well, where we got hung up last time was at section 30.
Right.
And you did good on explaining it in that short period of time. Anybody else? Councilor Lane?
And I was just going to ask our council attorney if she sees something she doesn't like, or does it all look good, or where are we at?
I'm fine. I'm fine with it.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, Councilor.
Figure where I'm at. You know, presented with approximately 80 pages, both of them. You know, a lot of which gives the office more power. You know, we've talked a lot about the attorney generals and the opinions and which is law, and that's a whole lot of power. I had a lawyer not from the attorney general's office that showed concern for this. You know, we're taking section 30 out, which is a good thing, but there's a lot of page, a lot of red. We thumbed through it just now. You know, more importantly than that lawyer that looked through this and had concerns, I've had constituents contact me about this, scared in some cases, and in all cases surely concerned. You know, I like Brian's thing he's laying out today. Simple. I like it. No parent can take another parent's rights away. Let's hit it. Your thing you're bringing out today, violence against women, let's hit it. I think at the very least, this still needs filtered down. I'm just one guy. But I won't be supporting it today, so I'm going to get that out there.
Okay.
We didn't bring it today, just to
Right.
clarify, it's been months.
I know you didn't bring it today. But not all my calls came the very day that you brought it. So I've been speaking with constituents, different people. They're not comfortable with it. I wasn't comfortable with it, hence just me. I'm not going to support this today.
Councilor Hangley.
Thank you, Speaker. And like Sean and certainly a lot like Dick, I've had reservations about this because we've had people in our area, in our district, that are reading this stuff. And I don't think they've had time to put it in front of eyes of attorneys and stuff. It's like I said earlier in that room, you know, we're in there, one or two people, and we're surrounded by attorneys. And none of us are attorneys. We wasn't elected as attorneys. So I'd like to have more on all this red line stuff because we had an act before that was good, and I know you can always change stuff a little bit, but man, this is just a whole bunch of changes in there. And that's scary as an elected official for me to sit here and vote on something like that. I just think it needs a little more time to be digested. So,
okay, Councilor Watkins.
Thanks, Speaker. The section 30 where the AG could do an investigation out of probable cause. Is that legal with right now without section 30? Is that within our statutes where AG can conduct investigation, probable cause without section 30?
So that section 30 was not conducting an investigation. It was during an investigation getting documents and records from people that you could send a investigatory demand letter saying, I need you to give me X. So, we conduct investigations every day. Someone makes a complaint to our office that someone's violating the law somewhere in the Cherokee Nation, and we talk to people, we look at documents, we ask questions. I think that's an investigation and kind of what we would normally understand it, and yes, we do that.
To the courts to conduct an investigation?
Well, I don't know what you're calling. If we get complaints every day in our office and we're asked to look into things or to talk to people or figure out what's going on, and if I call someone and ask them a question, is that an investigation? If I ask someone to send me a copy of a contract to review because someone has alleged something's been violated, is that an investigation? I don't know what you're asking me. Okay. We don't currently go to the court unless we file a case.
Can the AG conduct an investigation without a court order?
Yes.
Okay. That's my question.
And do. But again, oftentimes that's as simple as asking someone a question because someone has asked us a question.
You said yes and no?
I'm a lawyer. That's what I always say. It depends.
Man.
Maybe I can clarify this civil investigatory demand.
You're still young enough.
I'm still young. One of these days I'll figure it out, hopefully. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Speaker.
Okay. Councilor Lay, are you okay?
I'm good.
Okay.
Thanks, sir.
Okay. Counselor Taylor?
This is a huge document. I know we have had it for several months, and anytime I scan a document and see a bunch of red, it bothers me. But I've read through it, I don't know how many times, because I have had it for probably 3 months now. And I just want to express appreciation to the Attorney General's office for removing an entire section, which I know must have hurt, at our request. And so I'm ready to go on this, put this thing to bed.
Counselor Jimbo?
Well, I spent 3 or 4 hours on this last night too, and I've dealt with the state AG office a bit, and I realize that you do have to have some power to do things. But this, as a council, we rely on you to make a decision. That if we support that decision, or else we do or not, we can stand behind your decision, and in effect, that gives us a bit of immunity, whether it's written down or not. I mean, you're here to protect us too. I think that's a major deal. When I look at this, what you guys do, you do a lot of little things all the time, and only very seldom do you seem to do any really big controversial things. But on a daily basis, I know that you deal with a lot of small things that you need the ability to deal with, and I would hate to see that ability degraded.
I just want to make a brief comment. What we're talking about on this number one, this section right here, this is the law that we use as our basis when we file an opioid suit. When we go after big companies that are doing very bad things that are harming not only our individual citizens, but our community as a whole. They're harming our bottom line at Cherokee Nation. That is what this law is. This 30, however many pages. I know it's a lot, and I know there's lots of red, and it talks about what the AG can do, but that's because this is designed to allow us to go after those bad actors out there who are hurting Cherokee Nation. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, Councilor Buzzard?
Well, I have read this probably 3, maybe 4 times, trying to understand it, and from my understanding, my biggest problem was Section 30 last time. It's been removed. To me, this is a civil act to protect our citizens, and it looked to me like they have beefed it up enough to do even a better job at it. It's the way I'm seeing it. So, with Section 30 being out of it, I'm going to support this act today. I just feel like that they went in and made some changes and taken out the act, the section that I would not have agreed with, Section 30, and put some stuff in there. So I think it's a civil procedure to help protect our citizens. Maybe even more than what it was before. Yeah. That's the way I see it.
That is the goal. Yeah. No hidden agendas here. That's the goal.
And we appreciate you doing and taking on our wishes there. Joe, okay. Yeah, Councilor Raymond.
One more question before we go. I'm going to ask our attorney. You are comfortable with everything? 30 is.
I am. The rest would just be a policy decision that council would want to make for or against. But everything in here legal-wise is okay.
Feel better.
Okay. All right. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, did you get that?
It's just
all right. Move down to the next one. They're kind of connected. Councilor Vasquez.
Yeah, so legislative action under Title 12 of the Cherokee Nation Code has been a civil procedure. The purpose of this one is to modernize the laws and Cherokee Nation and elders, disabled, and other Cherokee citizens from unfair and deceptive practices. So it hasn't been changed at all it's been in our book the same way as we proceeded. I'm not going to approve this here.
Okay, got a motion? Second. Second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, one opposition there. Okay, Councilor Warner.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is an act repealing Title 10 of the Cherokee Nation Code, annotated Chapter 51, Section 1130, subsection D, and I put that in form of a motion.
Got a motion and a second? Got a motion? Need a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Councilor Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's an act relating to the duties of the Office of the Attorney General and amending the Attorney General Act. Put that in form of a motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, do roll call vote, Shelley.
Mike Schindler,
No.
Mary Baker Shaw,
No.
Eo Smith,
No.
Janice Taylor,
Yes.
Victoria Vasquez,
No.
David Walkingstick,
Yes.
Brian Warner,
No.
Bill Anglin,
Yes.
Keith Austin,
No.
Early Buzzard,
Yes.
Joe Byrd,
No.
Sean Crittenden,
Yes.
Mike Dobbins,
Abstain.
Frankie Hargis,
No.
Wanda Hatfield,
No.
Rex Jordan,
No.
Dick Lay.
Yes.
Six yes, 10 no, and 1 abstention. Motion fails.
Okay. Counselor Vasquez, would you read the next one?
Number 3,
Yes.
act relating to the safety for Native American women and creating special domestic violence criminal jurisdiction.
This is only for discussion only, and you do have a handout. I'm very passionate about this topic here. My daughter and I have been involved with her leading the way as at NCAI level, and it's just something that's really dear to my heart. When you can have non-tribal members come into our part of the country and abuse our women and then not have a place for discipline, it just goes all over me. And I know we have an education department that advocates for this and the One Fire, and we're going to have to amend some codes as we go through this. But this is really just for an update and discussion only today, that I want you to be aware of what I'll bring back in the future and make some amendments to this here. So Chrissy or Helena or Diane, if you want to add something, then feel free.
I just want to let you know that our office has been working on this with your former counsel, and I've already talked to Talina, and what we would like is she proposed some language that in several cases was better than ours, because what we had was a brand new bill that would just be inserted, and she actually went in and, like, where we already had a definition, changed that definition instead of just making a new section. And I would propose that, again, talking about attorneys, but the attorneys do a work group to just put our two versions together. I don't think there's anyone who's not supportive of VAWA.
Okay.
And it's something that we've been working on. I know Councilor Vasquez has expressed interest in getting this done as well in the past, and it's high time. Many other tribes have done it, and Cherokee Nation needs to do it. I think we just need maybe a couple of more months to make sure that the law looks like what we want it to look like. But I think that everyone is on board, and we just want what is in front of you guys to be kind of the best product, so we don't have to try to come back later and fix it.
Okay, good. I'd entertain a motion to table then. Motion to table, second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Yes, Diane?
Just wanted everyone to know that the Violence Against Women Act in 2013 was passed to allow different tribes to pass their law to have jurisdiction on non-tribal offenders for three certain types of domestic violence crimes. And our One Fire Victim Task Force last year served almost 400 people, because Oklahoma, the state of Oklahoma, has the largest, is the third state that has the largest number of domestic violence. And since we have a large number of tribal members, so we have a lot of tribal members that are victims of domestic violence. And this is one thing I'm working with the Attorney General for, and we want to get with your attorney so we can do them. I've been working on the upgrade of that legislation, and so we're going to get with the attorney.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Hargis, you take the last one.
It's an act amending Title 12 for the Cherokee Nation Code. I put that in the form of motion.
Okay, got a motion? Second. Kalina, is this something that, are they going to go hand in hand? Do we need to take this also? Can we pass this?
Yes, this needs to be probably tabled. Also, I've had some conversation with Chrissy about this, and we need to make a couple little tweaks, but essentially this is the civil part of the code that gives civil protective orders. And what VAWA did in 2013 is it clarified that tribes have full civil jurisdiction to issue and enforce civil protective orders. And so this is just updating that part of the code to conform with VAWA.
Okay. Motion table. Motion table. Second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Any announcements? Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a recommendation that registration reports to this body monthly or quarterly.
We'll have a report next month. Probably quarterly.
Is that okay with you guys?
Yes, Councilor Vasquez.
I would just like to make an announcement because, and this is regarding the culture committee that we adjourned so that we could watch a video. The technical problems didn't allow us to do that, so some people had walked out of the room. I wanted to let everyone know that in 2 months when we have our next culture committee, I've been promised that we will have a film that will be watchable on the big screen here so that the streaming audience can also see what we're seeing. So I just wanted to let you all know that.
Okay.
Is that good, registration?
Yeah, I'll have Shelley contact them to report next month.
Thanks, Speaker.
Okay. Need motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, second.
Second, adjourn.